Well, hello there and welcome, folks, to another episode of 162 Times, your daily baseball recap and preview show. I'm your host, Daniel Turner. This is episode 162. We made it. I've pressed record now on the 162nd episode of the season, and it feels good. It feels good to have done an entire season of recaps and previews. I would love for this to have led into a Seattle Mariners postseason preview. Obviously, they came up just short. But we will congratulate and tee up at least the matchups. So what we've got planned for you today is, obviously, we have the final game of the year to recap for you. That was Sunday afternoon at Seattle against the Oakland Athletics. It was Oakland's last ever game as the Oakland Athletics and Seattle's last game of the season. So we'll talk about that. I want to look back at my predictions for the American League and the National League in terms of who was going to make the playoffs versus who actually did make the playoffs. And then I want to talk a little bit about some of the Mariners players and stuff like that. So let's just get into it. I'll just get into, the regular swing of things. So, Sunday afternoon, Mariners and Athletics, as I said, last game in Athletics history, and the Mariners won 6-4. The Mariners swept the Athletics to finish the season at an 85-77 record, which is second in the American League West. The A's finished 69-93 in their final season, fourth in the AL West. Not worst in the AL West. That was the Angels. So good for the Athletics for not finishing last in their division in their final season. The A's had 7 hits for 4 runs, no errors. Mariners, 9 hits for 6 runs, no errors. It was Logan Gilbert getting the final win of the season for the Mariners. Good for him. He deserves it. 9-12 on the year. Unbelievable record given how good he is. Pardon me. 3.23 ERA. Losing pitcher was Mitch Spence. He drops to 8-10 on the season, 4.58 ERA. Gilbert was solid. 5 2/3 innings in only 76 pitches. 1 hit, no runs, no walks, 7 strikeouts, no homers. Bazardo finished off the 6th, third of an inning clean. Gabe Spire threw 1 inning, 3 hits, 2 runs, 1 walk, 2 Ks. Gregory Santos threw an inning with a strikeout, and Troy Taylor finished off the game with 3 hits, 2 runs, and 2 strikeouts. 12 strikeouts on the night for Mariner pitching. The Athletics, Spence did a 4 1/3, 7 hits, 6 runs, 5 Ks, and a homer. Boyle did an inning and 2/3, 1 hit, 2 walks, 2 Ks. And Muller, 2 innings pitched, 1 hit, and 1 strikeout for the Oakland Athletics. In terms of the scoring in this one, bottom of 4, Justin Turner got a ground rule double, which scored Cal Raleigh and Randy Arozarena to make it 2-0 Seattle. Then in the bottom of the 5th, Victor Robles doubled, and J.P. Crawford scored, made it 3-0. Julio then singled and brought in Victor Robles in the same inning, 4-0. And then Cal Raleigh, who was sitting on 98 RBI for the season, put his 34th home run of the year over the wall in right field, scoring Julio Rodriguez, giving him an even 100 RBI on the season. I'm so happy for Cal. He homered in all 3 of the games in this series to get to that 100 mark. It really means, I think it's good for Cal to have done that. He also has 94 home runs now, and that is the most of any catcher in Major League history in their first 4 seasons. Mike Piazza is the guy who he bested. Pretty good catcher, Mike Piazza. But Oakland didn't go away, and I'm grateful for this because they deserved better than their fate this season. Top of 7, Tyler Nevin doubled. Tyler Soderstrom and Seth Brown scored, made it 6-2. And then in the top of the 9th, the final RBI for the Oakland Athletics was brought in by Darryl Hernandez, his 3rd double of the year, on a sharp line drive to left fielder Randy Arozarena, scored Seth Brown and Zach Geloff and made it 4-2. Fantastic stuff there. Robles was 1 for 4 with an RBI and a run scored. Rodriguez was 1 for 3 with an RBI and a run scored. Raleigh was 2 for 4 with 2 runs scored and 2 RBI. Arozarena was 1 for 3 with a run scored. Justin Turner was 1 for 2 with 2 RBI. Crawford was 2 for 3 with a run scored. Excellent night by the boys at the plate. And if we are just going to, let's see if we can get all. Can we get all here? Excellent. Okay, so I just want to see this. So in the top of the ninth, it was Max Schumann who struck out swinging for the third and final out of the game and the final out in the Oakland Athletics history. Max Schumann, folks, remember that. Kyle McCann struck out to make it 2 outs, and the first out of that inning was Tyler Soderstrom flying out. Then Seth Brown doubled, Mitch Haniger caught that double, Zach Geloff singled, and then Darrell Hernandez brought them both in. So that's how the season ends. And they were facing rookie Troy Taylor. So, trivia fans, keep that one in your hats. All right. Before we get to sort of a unsentimental Mariners recap, let's talk about the scores on Sunday as we always do. So, final game of the season for most teams. Cardinals over the Giants, 6-1 in San Francisco. Red Sox beat the Rays 3-1 in Boston to finish the season 81 and 81. The Phils beat the Nats 6-3. The Yankees beat the Pirates 6-4. The Rangers blanked the Angels 8-0. The Marlins over the Blue Jays 3-1. Dodgers beat the Rockies for, I don't know, the millionth time this year, 2-1. Diamondbacks beat the Padres 11-2 to give themselves a chance, and I'll talk about that in a second. The Orioles beat the Twins 6-2. The White Sox won the final game of their season 9-5 over the playoff-bound Detroit Tigers. 41 and 121, the worst team ever in baseball. The Chicago White Sox of 2024. Detroit Tigers make the playoffs with an 86 and 76 record. Whoa, just squeezing ahead of the Mariners, eh? Mets 5, Brewers nothing, Reds 3, Cubbies 0, Royals 4, Braves 2. That too was very interesting. And then the Astros and Guardians game was canceled. So both those teams ended up only playing 161 games this season. I'm sure that's happened before, but boy, is that off-putting. And then, okay, so it all came down to 2 games between the Mets and the Braves, which had been rained out due to Hurricane Helene, which is ravaging the south of the United States right now. So if the way it was going to work is if the team split, so if the Braves won 1 and the Mets won 1, then they would both make the playoffs. If either team won both games, that team would make the playoffs, and the Diamondbacks would also make the playoffs. So in Game 1, it was an 8-7 win by the Mets. Apparently, it was one of the games of the year. 6 runs by the Mets in the top of the 8th, 4 runs by the Braves in the bottom of the 8th, and then 2 runs by the Mets in the top of the 9th to win it. And then in the second game, the Braves blanked the Mets 3-0. So at the end of the day, the poor old Diamondbacks do not make the playoffs on the final game and day of the year. Pretty incredible stuff, eh? All right, so let's tee up the playoff picture here, and then also kind of relate that back to how I predicted things at the start of the year. Shocking news, though, folks. I'm just opening up the latest news section of the MLB.com page, and I have learned that Pete Rose has died at the age of 83. Troubled but tremendous hitter Pete Rose. Charlie Hustle, the all-time Major League hit leader, with 4,256 hits. My father saw his 4,000th hit, a double down the right field line at Olympic Stadium when he was briefly playing for the Expos. A double down the right field line. Polarizing guy, gambled on baseball, gambled on games that he themselves played in, was absolutely unrepentant about that, never, ever apologized, not in the Hall of Fame as a result. Took out Ray Fosse at home during an All-Star game, but hell of a ball player. 2 World Series with the Reds, 75 and 76 on the Big Red Machine, and he also won a title with Philadelphia in 1980. Grew up near Cincinnati, played his entire career with the Reds. Pretty darn good ball player. Pretty darn good ball player. Only 95 games with the Expos at age 43 in 1984, but it was there that he notched that 4,000th hit. His hit to break Ty Cobb's all-time hit record was off Eric Show. Fans, Eric Show. Bit of trivia for you there. Anyway, that's sad news. I'm sorry to hear that. That has broken our coverage. But not to be outdone, or not to be daunted, rather, we are going to lean right in to our postseason picture and how that compared to what I had said at the start of the year. So I think I'll just start by recapping that at the start of the year in the American League, I had said the division winners were going to be Houston, Baltimore, and Cleveland. And I had Houston as the number 1 team, Baltimore as the 2 seed, Cleveland as the 3 seed. Then I had the Yankees in the first wild card spot, the Rangers in the second wild card spot, and the Mariners in the third wild card spot. So I was correct about Houston and Cleveland winning the division. I had them in the wrong order. And I was right about the Yankees making the playoffs, but did not think they were going to win the division. And I was also correct about Baltimore making the playoffs, but I thought they would win the division. So I got 4 out of 6 playoff teams correct, and none of them in the right order in the American League. Because ultimately, the Yankees were the number 1 seed. Cleveland was the 2nd seed. Houston won their division, but was the 3rd seed. Baltimore was the first wild card. Kansas City was the 2nd wild card. And the Detroit Tigers sneak in is the 6th seed and the 3rd wild card. So the matchups are that the 6th seed Tigers will play the 3rd seeded Astros. The 5th seeded Royals of Kansas City will play the 4th seeded Orioles of Baltimore. And the Yankees and Guardians will have a bye and await the divisional round. Should be good stuff. Now, over in the National League, to recap, I had the Dodgers winning their division and being the 1 seed. I had the Braves winning the East and being the 2 seed, and I had the Brewers winning the Central and being the 3rd seed. Then in the first wild card spot, I had the Diamondbacks. Then I had the Miami Marlins and the Cincinnati Reds. So I was correct about 3 of 6 playoff teams. I got the Dodgers, Braves, and Brewers right. And I got the Dodgers right as the number 1 seed and the Brewers right as the 3 seed. But it was the Phillies winning the East, not the Braves. I didn't have them making the playoffs. It was the San Diego Padres as the first wild card team. I didn't have them making the playoffs. And it ultimately was the Braves as the 2nd wild card team and the Mets as the 3rd wild card team. So the Reds and the Marlins did not feature in the playoff race, and the Diamondbacks were, of course, eliminated on the final day. So, not too shabby. Now, the way I had this breaking down was ultimately I had like the Marlins beating the Reds, the Diamondbacks beating the Brewers, the Braves beating the Diamondbacks, and the Dodgers beating the Marlins. So I've got a Dodgers-Braves NLCS and the Dodgers moving on to the World Series and ultimately winning. That's my prediction. And then in the American League, I had Cleveland beating New York, the Mariners beating the Rangers, and then the Mariners beating Baltimore, and Houston beating New York, and then Houston. So I had an M's Houston ALCS, which won't happen, and I had the Astros. So I have Astros Dodgers as the World Series. That could still come true. All right. Let's look at the final standings for folks, because this is, of course, a Sunday on a Monday, so we might as well do that, right? So, starting with the American League East, Division winners, the Hogs. So the Yankees win their division with a best record in the American League, 94-68, 147 run differential. Baltimore in second, 91-71, plus 87 differential. The Red Sox finished 81-81 with a plus 4 differential. The Rays 80-82, the minus 59 differential, and the Jays 74-88 with a minus 72 run differential, worst in their division. The Central, wildly surprising division, fascinating division, was won pretty much wire to wire by the Cleveland Guardians. They finished 92-69, plus 87 on the differential. The Royals, second place in the division, 86-76, plus 91. The Tigers, 86-76, plus 40. So both of them finished 6.5 back of the Yankees. The Orioles were 3 back of the Yankees ultimately. The Minnesota Twins, just outside the playoffs, they really tanked down the stretch. They finished 82-80, 10.5 back in the division, 4.5 back in the wild card. They were 2-8 over their last 10, and they lost 4 in a row to end the season with a plus 7 only on the differential at the end of the day. Brutal. White Sox, worst team of all time, 41-121. That's a .253 winning percentage. They were 51.5 games back in the division, 45 back in the wild card when it was all said and done. They did finish 5-5 in their last 10 with 2 straight wins, but their run differential was minus 306, folks. Minus 306. They gave up 813 runs this year and scored only 507. 23-58 at home, 18-63 on the road. Just brutal. The AL West, the only division that matters. The Mariners. Houston wins the division again, 4th year in a row, 88-73 with a plus 91 differential. They're a pretty good team, right? Mariners finished second, 85-77, .525 winning percentage on the season, 3.5 back in the division, 1 back in the wild card ultimately. They finished the last 10 games 8-2 with a 4-game win streak and a plus 69 run differential. As much as this isn't anything, because when you don't make the playoffs, it's nothing. What could have been? The Texas Rangers, 78-84, 10.5 back. The Athletics, 69-93, 19.5 back. The Angels, 63-99, 25.5 back in the division. Minus 162 on the year for the Angels, minus 121 for the Athletics, minus 55 for the Rangers. Over to the National League, the Phils win the East. Philadelphia Phillies, 95-67, plus 113 on the differential. 6-game margin over the Braves and the Mets. The Braves finished second in the division, 89-73, plus 97. The Mets, 89-73, plus 71. 6 games back, as I said. They both make the playoffs in the wild card. The Nats finished 4th in the division, 20 games under 500, 71-91. 24 back, 104 on the negative side of the differential. And the Marlins stunk out the joint, 62-100. 100 losses on the season for the Marlins, minus 204 on the differential. In the Central, the Brewers won wire-to-wire, 93-69 for Milwaukee, plus 136 on the differential. Way to go, guys. That's a 10-game win over their opponents in the division. Chicago Cubs finished second, 83-79, 10 games back. Cardinals also 83-79. Reds finished 77-85, 16 games back. The Pirates 76-86, 17 games back. What's crazy about this, at the end of the day, the Cubs kind of righted the ship, and their differential was plus 67. The Cardinals finished third, same record as the Cubs, with a minus 47 differential. And the Reds, way behind those two teams, had a plus 5 differential on the season. The Pirates, who finished last, had a minus 74 run differential. And finally, the National League West, so the Los Angeles Dodgers won the division with a 98-64 record, plus 156 on the season. So is that identical? That's the best record in baseball and the best differential, and they have the best team. 5 games winning margin over second place San Diego Padres, who had a great season, 93-69, plus 91 on the differential. They're the number 1 wildcard team. The Diamondbacks sadly miss out on the playoffs, even though they finished 89-73. 9 games back in the division, plus 98 on the differential. And the Giants finished 4th in the division. San Francisco was 80-82, 18 back, minus 6. And the Colorado Rockies finished 61-101. With a minus 247 run differential. So the Rockies were the second worst team in baseball behind your Chicago White Sox. You know, if you look at the wild card, and this is just so brutal, but yeah, the Mariners finish a game out. And there was a game, so the Mariners, obviously there's lots of missed opportunities. I want to see Seattle's record against Anaheim this year. I'm just going to do that real quick here. Just one sec. So as I was saying, there's a couple that one game, like one game could you get lucky in a couple games and you win one, you get unlucky in a couple, you lose some. But the Mariners versus the Los Angeles Angels this year, so they swept the Angels at home at the end of May, and then they played the Angels as 3-0 Mariners at that point. Then they played the Angels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 more times. And the Mariners won just 2 of those games. So they went 2-8 against the Angels down the stretch. That's the playoffs right there. And it hurts my heart to say this, but 6 of those games were one-run games. The other one that comes to mind is the Parker Meadows. So the Mariners and the Tigers played a series in early August, I want to say. Yeah, it was around August 10th because my brother was visiting. And so they lost the first game to the Tigers, kind of brutal. This was in Seattle. Game 2, Cal hits a towering blast that will give them the lead, if not win them the game. I think it was bottom of 9. I think it was a walk-off opportunity. And the center fielder, Parker Meadows, goes up over the center field wall. It's like 405 feet, and he brings it back with an unbelievable catch. Tigers go on to win the game. You know, if that game goes the way of the Mariners, then they're in the playoffs and the Tigers are on the outside. Now, conversely, in Game 3 of that series, the Mariners were down to like their last strike, and Mitch Haniger drove one into right field, and their right fielder made a dive for it and went under his glove and went all the way to the wall, and the Mariners scored like 3 runs to walk it off. So that was pretty improbable too. You know what I mean? Like if it had gone the other way, the Tigers fans would be talking about that one, and we wouldn't be talking about the Parker Meadows catch. But I think the Parker Meadows catch needs to be spoken about. I think bigger picture, there was this thing how like Edgar Martinez and Dan Wilson took over the team, and the offense started to be an offense, and they also, signed Randy Arozarena and Justin Turner and stuff like that. But apparently there was something on the internet from Ryan Divish, who's this guy who writes for the Seattle Times, and he's usually got pretty good stuff, but they was talking about how people were complaining about the old hitting coach because his pregame meeting was to ask guys to look for one specific pitch in one specific location. That was supposed to be their approach at the plate. But if that pitch never came along, the plan completely backfired. So, like, the Mariners' strikeout numbers, the Colorado Rockies, the second worst team in baseball, just edged them for, like, worst strikeout numbers in terms of, like, percentage or something like that. But I think the Mariners did set the all-time record for strikeouts this season by quite a good margin. And they also set, in the same year, best team ERA, best batting average against, best whip. Like, they had such good starting pitching, and they didn't make the playoffs. It's actually, like, staggeringly bad. But let's talk a little bit about, let's talk a little bit about, some of the good things. Let's talk about some of the good things. So I want to talk about Cal Raleigh, because Big Cal played in 153 games as a catcher. He had 546 at-bats. Second most on the team compared to Julio. 73 runs, 120 hits, 16 doubles, 34 homers, 100 RBI on the season, 70 walks, 176 strikeouts, 6 stolen bases to just 1 caught stealing. 220 average, 748 whip. I just love Cal so much. And I want to look at this when it comes to catcher, because I think he is the best catcher in baseball. But let's see. Only Salvador Perez of the Kansas City Royals has had more RBI at 104. Nobody had more home runs than Cal. Nobody had more home runs than Cal in either league. In the league, he is the best catcher in baseball. Now his OPS, but his OPS is like top 6. Anyway, just an absolute gem. Absolute gem. I think that's a good way to end the season, talking about Cal. My guy Cal. 34 homers, 100 RBI. We'll be back with more. I enjoyed doing this. Thanks so much for listening. All those of you out there who did listen, it was really a pleasure. And, yeah, thanks for checking us out. See you next year.